age of Rat, and it was interesting because this is also the era where Vu as a player kind of comes into his own in Quake, and Rat and Vu's rivalry in CPM is pretty well known, pretty well storied. But before that, he also had a rivalry with Aphelion, so he was the dominant dueler in a lot of ways in the first real golden era, maybe the only real golden era of Promode, dominating his peers as well as everybody below him. He, a member of the legendary TDM team that we've spoken to two members of already, Swelt and Drex Nobles. Probably the best TDM team in Europe. I don't know if it's fair to say they were the best TDM team ever because the North American and European teams never really got a chance to play. But that's my introduction to Rat. I'm going to let him introduce himself. So, hi Rat, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for taking the time today.
Hello and thank you.
How are you doing, and how are things going?
Things are going very well.
Excellent. So, Rat, if you could please introduce yourself, give us an idea of who you are, how long you've been playing, when you started playing, that'd be excellent.
Okay, so my name is Antti. I started playing Quake World in 97, I think, when I was 12, 11. And I really got interested in Quake after True Gamers Invitational in 98, I think. April 98.
And how were these early days for you as a young player? Both in Quake and just generally being very young. Describe these, these matches that you would have in these games you would have, because it's only a couple of years later that, or maybe even the following year, that, from what I've been told, you were part of a Quake World Division 1 TDM team. So if you can give us an idea of what that was like.
The Division 1?
Yes.
Well, I started playing Quake World with Nobles like straight away when I started.
Okay, this was 96?
Their team 98,
Sorry, 98.
I think.
Oh.
First I played with my friends, but they didn't play that much. Well, I still have one friend particularly who played with me for like 1 year. Then we found out clan stuff in Quake.
Were you recruited into the Nobles, or how did the Nobles start, if I could ask you that? Do you know that?
Well, I don't know exactly how they started. Okay. Do you know Vertigo from Quake World? He used to run some tournaments.
I don't, unfortunately. I'm going to be honest. Okay.
Okay.
So, yeah, tell us this time about, I guess, the pre-CPM Rat. So you get into Quake World, you start playing TDM, in around 98, I guess you're a part of Nobles. And what happens next?
Yeah. Then Quake 3 comes out, and I decided to play Quake 3 because I did play really much Quake World. Like when I was in school, after school I played like 8 to 10 hours.
Okay.
Never really concentrated on school because it wasn't that important at that time.
Describe the competitive community in this era?
It was very competitive, like super competitive. Probably most players in any of the Quake World games.
Now, Finland's an interesting place because it seems to produce. It has a relatively small population compared to some of the other countries, but it seems to have produced a lot of great Quake World players and Quake players and CPM players as well. Why do you think this is?
I think because the scene was at that time really big, so people could get a lot of games with equal levels, and the game was new. So the innovation was a little bit different than what it was now.
Okay.
And like now, if I compare the Quake scene to the early days, there's a lot of less Finnish players than there were at that time.
Okay, so how do you get into CPM? you played Quake World for a bit. You've been relatively successful by joining a Division 1 TDM team, and then you get
Mhm.
into Quake 3. I imagine at the end of '99, early 2000.
Yes.
How did
Yeah.
you get? How did you initially like Quake 3? Because it's quite different from Quake World. What were your concerns at the time? And how did you get into CPM?
Well, I think that Vanilla Quake 3 was quite fun
Okay.
actually, with the railgun and which we didn't have in Quake World, of course. And when I met some players like Faz, we used to duel a lot in Vanilla Quake.
Faz, the Swedish player, is that right?
Yes,
And
yes,
how would these games
yes.
go for you? Because Faz ended up.
They were pretty
Oh,
even,
really?
like 50-50, I think.
That's interesting because Faz goes on to become a very, very good VQ3 player. Probably, I think fair to say a legendary
Yes,
player as a dueler and as a member of the Eyeballers in TDM. Um,
yes,
so you're having a lot of fun in Quake 3 at this point. How do you get
yes.
introduced into CPM and what causes you to switch?
Well, I kinda always liked Quake World more, and when CPM was announced, like there was this, I can't remember exactly how it went. There was this demo, the announcement, like some, I don't know who were playing, and I thought it looked cool because I always liked the speed in Quake World, and the speed for PPM was nice. So that's really how I got to play it, and I wanted to play something different than vanilla because it started to become a little stagnated.
Understood. So you start playing CPM. How quickly do you notice yourself kind of going from just a beginner player that's installed the mod to, a very competitive player? And well, actually, let's take a step back. At that point, were you
Okay.
competing in any VQ3 tournaments? And generally, what were your results like?
I didn't really compete in vanilla Quake tournaments. I just played with random people, joined a server and played. That's really how it went.
Any particular reason for this? Because if you're having, split decisions with Faz, who even in the very early days of Quake 3 was posting pretty significant like results, any particular?
I don't know. Maybe because I started playing CPM, so I didn't think I wanted to compete in vanilla.
Interesting. Just give me 1 second here.
Okay.
So at this point, even though you're very competitive in VQ3, you're not competing. You get into CPM and you start competing. What causes this kind of competitive switch to turn back on? Do you remember? Sorry.
I don't know. Maybe if I find it fun. So when it's fun, I think the competition also becomes more fun, and I can enjoy it more. So I don't know really. I can't remember.
Now, I guess you're probably known more for as a dual player, but it seems like you start with
Yes,
TDM, if I'm not mistaken.
yes. I
Sorry,
was TDM mainly in Quake World until there started to come some duel tournaments, which really got me interested in duel also.
what do you like better? Which
What?
one do you like better?
Duel or
Yes.
TDM? High level TDM, of course. Like at the top level, I think it's more entertaining.
Interesting. Okay, we were gonna talk about some challenges in ACS, but I wouldn't mind continuing this thread of TDM. Now, you've played TDM at a high level in Quake World in the early days, and I'm sure TDM today and throughout the years changed a lot since when you stopped playing. But you also played TDM at a high level at CPM. Can you describe to me what you think the significant differences are, and maybe not which one is better, but which one you prefer and why?
You mean TDM
Yes.
or
No, I
duel?
mean TDM versus in CPM versus TDM in Quake World.
Okay. I prefer TDM in Quake World.
Okay. Why is that?
Well, I think it's a lot more unforgiving for the team that doesn't have the control, which I kind of like.
Okay.
Uh,
Well, what makes you like this?
well, I don't know. I think it makes the game more intense when you have less chances to gain control and items, and you have to coordinate really well to even get the rocket launcher if it's being controlled on, for example, DM2 on Quake World.
Now, Swalt made an interesting point last week that sometimes these differences are a result of, excuse me, are as a result of the competitive community and how far the competitive community can push the maps. Do you think this may
Yeah.
be a case where CPM TDM, beyond a certain kind of scope, was never really pushed any further competitively, so we never really got to see its limits in a lot of ways, if it has any? Would you think this is a potential? Do you think there's some sort of accuracy in this statement, or do you think just technically, as a result of the rule sets, when it concerns the movement, the weapons, and the armors, Quake World is just the superior game?
Well, I think that in some way the game limits haven't been pushed to the max.
Okay.
But I also think that with rail it makes it much easier to gain control at some maps. And
Now, let me flip that question on your head. If it's easy to regain control with rail, could you not also make the argument that it's easy to maintain control with rail?
well, yes, but you can always just snipe from across the map. Well, depending on the map, of course.
That's true. That's right. It does depend on the map because some maps, a lot of the maps I find, the areas in which the important items aren't necessarily an area which lends to the strengths of the railgun. So there's long distance, unreturnable instant damage. There are some areas, the main atrium, for example, in CPM 27 with the LG and YA and Mega are, for example. That's an area that I think is very strong for railgun. And I think all maps will have some strong areas, but generally where the strong part anyway, what would you like to see change, or what do you think could be good changes for CPM TDM in terms of improving it on a technical level, then, just if we take it for granted that the limits have been pushed to the max?
Okay.
What do you think, Ryan?
Well, I think that if the limits have been pushed to the max, maybe, well, making a little different maps would maybe ease up the control issues.
Or maybe just, well, do you think if you got, let me ask you this, if you got the rail, sorry,
Well,
go ahead.
yeah. Well, I once had this dream that someone would add DM2 from Quake World to the game and see how it plays in TDM
I imagine,
with no
yeah, I
rail.
imagine there are some poor ports of it, like some one-to-one ports, for example. But I don't think there's any ports in the sense of taking a Airwalk, for example, and then a CPM 22, which is very different from one another, but obviously the same map, right? But the quality of CPM 22 is very, very high. But if you did it one-to-one Quake World to Quake 3, I don't think Airwalk would be very good in Quake 3.
I was talking about claustrophobic DM2.
Yes, no, I know, I'm aware. I'm making the comparison between
okay, I
Airwalk
understand.
and 22 and how it's a really good way. They scaled it properly, for example. They made some changes so it fits CPM and Quake 3 better. And I think that for Quake World DM2, there hasn't been that attempt yet. Although there's probably some shitty versions you can find in Quake 3 that are one-to-one. What is it about TDM that you like?
I like the speed and the more control more players give, and the teamwork is awesome if you can execute like superior strategic moves and.
Can you describe? I usually have this. I've had this discussion for a long time with some of my friends, and my position on it has changed a lot. I think Quake, in a lot of ways, strategically, is a very simple game. There aren't that many kind of strategical elements to it, I think, when you compare it to a game like, let's say, a Dota or
Yes.
a Counter-Strike. The pre-match and pre-game preparations in Quake is usually just playing a lot and watching demos. Where in CS, there's a lot of kind of setups and executions that you have to do. Same in Dota, I think, in comparison. What do you think, or how do you think the limits of team play and how interesting and how deep that is in Quake can be improved? It's within the context of TDM.
Okay. Well, the one thing that comes in mind from Quake Champions is that they also have power. Oh, the immunity. I can't remember what it's called now.
Sorry, what do you mean?
I mean, that's like in Quake World. In DM3, you have Pentagram.
Oh, Battlesuit, right.
Yeah. Like in CPM, it's not that much used.
That's right.
And I think that in Quake World, if you have both of them on the map, it makes more different situations. Like in Quake World, also Quake Champions also.
Yeah, Quake Champions also. I see what you're saying. The TDM only has one power up at any given time.
Yes.
I think they've indicated that they would like to have maps with dual power-ups because it is a very interesting dynamic. I agree with you, especially between Battlesuit and Quad, because they both have advantages and disadvantages as one another. For example, if a Quad LG finds you in an open space, the Battlesuit doesn't make a difference, I think. Like, you are getting obliterated. But if the Battlesuit finds you in a tight corridor or around the corner, like, the Quad at that point is completely useless because the Battlesuit's going to obliterate you. I agree with you there. I think having the battlesuit on more maps would be helpful as well. Because the battlesuit's an important part in the relationship of power between the items, I think. And I think when you have the most powerful item missing, I think you're right. I think some strategical elements do kind of get lost, unfortunately. But outside of that, have you ever thought, okay, maybe these are some ways in which I can see even Quake World TDM, for example, or CPM TDM, being able to kind of push things in terms of strategies to the next level? It's okay to say no, by the way. I'm just asking you because you're a long-time TDM player, so I wonder how I'm just trying to figure out like what ideas you have towards TDM in the future, I guess.
Well, I also think that maybe CPM should, maybe even more have some like basically useless rooms, if you know what I mean. So you can like basically back off there, and I don't know if the flow of the game changes and you can't actually protect every base. I don't know. I can't explain it well at the moment.
Do you mean to say in CPM it might be too easy to have control? Is that right or no?
No. Okay. But I kind of like areas where there isn't much, maybe some health globes and ammo boxes.
Okay, so more areas where it's clearly like weaker. If this is a weak area, you don't really want to be here unless you're not in control. You think that's an issue with the mapping in CPM? There's just too many items available across the map as a whole, so it's harder to it's easier to.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, maybe sometimes. Yes.
It's just the items need to be zoned out better. Like instead of being connecting all the rooms, maybe it needs to be specifically in the rooms. Yeah, I can see how that might be an interesting kind of TDM concept as well. Because I think when I think of CPM 21, for example, I can't think of a scenario where I'm more than 4 to 5 jumps away from some sort of item. Right? I can't think of a place on the map where you're not you're always close to either health, armor, or weapons on CPM 22. There is no there's obvious strong points like the red room and stuff, but you're right. Across the map, it's littered with items. Now, did you ever play any CTF, or were you only into TDM?
Well, only in the TDM in Quake world.
Now, inside a TDM team, describe what your role would be. What are you trying to do? And what do you have to be?
Usually, I was a quad runner, or defending red armor or yellow armor on DM3.
So you're, I guess, what a Dota would call you as a carry. Is that fair? And
Yes.
how would you describe your play style?
Quite fast, actually, and quite selfless, really. I would almost always help the team and not think about myself too much.
Would you describe yourself as you say fast, do you mean to say like an aggressive player?
Yes, aggressive. Yes.
What do you think was more important for you, kind of being an aggressive player, or kind of be as the kind of hard carry, trying to play a more controlled, kind of a controlled game?
It kind of depends on the situation of the game. Like aggressive if we are losing, and more controlled if we are on control and have good way to acquire more frags.
Now, you've played probably against a lot of very good TDM players. Are there some general styles that you can categorize the players into? And if there are, what would they be?
Well, I think they're like aggressive, of course, and then there's like I don't.
Oh, okay. If that's that's kind of a difficult question. So let me ask you this: who are some of your favorite TDM players to have played with and then played against, and why? What makes them good?
I used to like to play against Vana. I don't know if you know
Vana,
him.
Vana? I
yes,
don't know him. Sorry.
yes, he's a Quake World player.
Okay.
Finnish. He used to play for, I don't know, one of the top teams in Finland. He was very entertaining to watch, and
What?
and
Sorry, go ahead. Please
yes.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I played in a duel tournament against him and lost, but I always liked to. Also, I like it to play against Reppia.
Rapier?
Rep.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
know.
Right, Reppy. That's
yes. Quite well player. Firing squad.
Why did you like play? What is it about their styles that you either enjoyed watching or playing against?
I don't know. It's more like each team has their own play style, or at least used to have at that time. So when we played against Firing Squad, we really didn't think we could win them, but we did. So it's kind of like a roller coaster from there with the emotions.
What about in CPM? What are some TDM players that you like playing with or against, and what and why?
I used to like play with Markus and Rex.
Okay. What made
Rex? I think that Rex communication with Rex was really easy, and so the playing with him was always fun, and he was quite good at like maybe Rex wasn't the most frags in our clan, but he usually delivered really good control for the items.
Tell us a bit about Mark, because he's kind of one of those players that at the time was considered like incredibly good, but for some reason the community as a whole kind of forgot about him, mainly because he kind of disappeared. What kind of person was he, and what kind of player was Mark?
Mark was my Swedish friend. We used to duel a lot also when we didn't have TDM games. So I don't know. He had a really good internet connection at that time, like low ping to UK, and so well, Mark was kind of like my counterpart, where he did a lot of the tracking in our team. I don't know. I think we played quite similarly.
When I guess to the question of what made Mark good, a combination of a good internet connection and an aggressive play style. Is that fair to say? And just be
And good aim.
Good aim. Okay,
Good aim.
interesting.
Yes.
Because Mark kind of. Do you know what happened to Mark or where he went? Because he kind of disappeared.
No, I don't know.
You don't know, eh? You haven't spoken to him in a while?
No.
Okay, let's go back to kind of, I guess, your beginnings in CPM. So the first tournament I could find for you, if you give me maybe there's more. That could be the case. But let me go here. The first tournament I found for you was in the year 2002, November 17th, the Challenges Europe Invitational, where look at what the results. You ended up in first place over Matrox, Mekon, Toxter, Deep OS, Impulse, Raven, and Zoom. Like, these are all very good players. You know, Mekon did quite well, so did Matrox. Everybody knows Impulse and Zoom, I think. Raven was, I think, a part of Team Y. Do you remember anything from this tournament, or what's your first kind of remarkable memory of dueling in CPM in a competitive environment?
Oh, I think it was playing in the USA tourneys.
This happens before the Challenges EU Invitational. Yes. Okay, please, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. We can continue that later. I think I can't really remember like the competitive skill. Well, probably playing against Grogot, like you said, and other Polish players is where I started to think that I could do something good in CPMA.
Sorry, you wanted to talk about the American tournaments. Let's talk about them, because your first North American tournament, I think, is Challenges North America, and this is a one where you famously lose to Aphelion in the grand finals in the second set. Do you have any memories or emotions or impressions of this tournament, of what it was like and what it felt like?
Yes, well, I felt like that I can't win the finals. So when I won the first set, I was like, I couldn't probably believe it. It was like quite a dream. So I kind of expected to lose on the second.
Now, in the second set, I think it's when famously Aphelion drops CPM 3A and doesn't give you a chance to play him on that map. Do you remember what that felt like at the time?
No, I can't remember it anymore. I think it was a bad thing, probably. It was my best map.
Yeah, were you do you remember ever being a little bit upset the fact that he dropped 3A and didn't give you a fair chance, especially because he was playing with low ping and you were playing with a high ping?
I don't think it mattered, really. I think it was just fun to play in the tournament, and I didn't really care about the ping or the map drop, but I don't think I took it as a challenge, and so.
Interesting. So, around this time, a couple of more Challenges Cups happens in North America that you play in. Challenges 2 and Challenges 3. You don't do as well in the next two cups. Hello? Okay,
Hello?
no, perfect, no problem. Sorry, so I was saying you do pretty well in the following two cups. Well, you don't, excuse me, you don't
Yes.
do as well in the following Challenges Cups that happened in April and September of 2003. You end up getting ninth and 7th
Yeah.
respectively. I think the competitive community kind of got a lot bigger very quickly in this time period. Anything you remember specifically from Challenges 2 or 3 that was either interesting or unique or maybe just forgotten about?
No, I've like forgotten most of it.
No, that's fair because it's around this time where your rivalry with Vu starts to develop as well. This 2003
Yeah.
year. What was that like playing against Vu? Why was he? How was he different from the other players you were against, playing against? And if you can just generally tell us about your relationship with
He
Vu.
was tactically better than most
He was
people.
tactically
Like,
better.
yes,
Okay.
like I didn't like the game suited him like more than most. I don't know. It was I kind of remember somehow that I like saw him play when he was had just started playing
Okay.
CPMA.
And
I think he didn't move that well. He couldn't move really at that point. I think I'm not sure.
and how
Like bunny hopping wasn't there yet,
understood.
but the aim was good.
Now, how quickly did Vu develop into the kind of player he became, and how
I think quite fast.
yeah, how quick was that kind of that initial time you see him and he's kind of not really he's struggling with the movement to a player that's kind of now challenging you for the top spot in the European duel scene?
Well, I'm not sure how long it took. Like it's been like many years.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
No, I understand. Uh, so I let me ask you this then. What makes Vu different from the other players you played at that time?
he was aggressive and less of a cannon fodder than most.
Less than what, sorry?
Less than I'm practice.
Understood. Like, how was his aim compared
Like
to some of the other players then, I guess, at that time?
I think it was really good.
Was it bad? Was that something different when you played against Vu that his aim seemed a lot stronger than the other players?
Yeah.
Now you were able to overcome him even though he was a very strong aim player and you know his movement famously was very strong as well. It continues to be. I think there's a
Yes.
clip of him that recently got a few thousand views of him just strafing backwards on
Yes.
Blood Run. Um,
Yes, I think the movement was a big part of it because there wasn't really that many good movers in CPMA.
okay.
Like really good.
I'm going to ask you a quick tangent question to this, to the question of movement.
Yeah.
How significant was being strong in movement when you were playing versus what you see today? Because it seems like today pretty much everybody and anybody has pretty strong movement in CPM. But
Yeah.
back then, like there were very few players with good. How much do you think this has changed the way the game should be looked at? Because at that point, having strong movement gave you a remarkable advantage. But nowadays, it seems like almost anybody can start strafe jumping pretty quickly, and I don't know why that is. But
Mhm.
sorry.
Well, I think you could change the game to match the movement, but it would mean probably making the game a lot harder for some people.
Any changes you would recommend specifically?
Well, I don't have a quick
Uh-huh.
answer for that now.
No problems. That's completely fine. Sorry, that was my off the beaten path question. Now there's this rivalry with Vu, but you also have kind of I guess, a rivalry with the with the best player in North America at the time, which was Ophelia. Because we discussed, you know, you had
Yeah.
this famous finals against him. I think you may have played him one or two more times after that.
Yeah.
You did playing with Nobles against Darkseid as well. How was Aphelion different to Vu? Because they're both very good players in this era, but they.
I don't. Aphelion kind of reminds me of Rapha. I don't know why, but he does.
What would be Vu's modern comparison? If Aphelion reminds you of a Rafa, who would Vu remind you of at that time?
Mm,
Maybe more like a Cypher? Like a
who?
Cypher?
Yes,
Is that
maybe.
fair?
No.
Okay. So what would you think?
I don't know. Who would remind me of a Defrag player with an aim?
Okay, so there isn't anybody specifically you could think of today. Understood. That's fair.
No.
Sorry, let me go back to my question list. Uh, you play so. What was this 2003 year was probably I think the best year in CPM. You have the Challenger Series, you have One Sanity, the Big TDM Cup, and a couple of other cups as well that happened throughout the year. What was this year like specifically, and what do you remember from it that you liked, and is there any funny stories or things that you didn't like in particular?
I think there were so many tournaments that it felt like that you had to practice a lot for all of them.
Why were people playing? Like there was no money on the line ever for these tournaments. What motivated you?
Prestige.
That's it, just prestige. That's interesting. Uh,
And fun,
yeah.
of course.
What was the mood like in the community? You know, with all these tournaments and all this activity, was there the feeling that maybe CPM is going to replace VQ3, or no, not really?
No, not really. At least for me, I felt like that some the One Sanity teams that played like Abus,
Yes.
so that they would never start really play CPMA. That it's just another tournament with some players that played once or twice.
In
I don't know. We kind of hope that it would get more players.
unfortunately it didn't. 2003 I think is probably still the year with
Yes.
the highest activity ever. Like as far as the CPM community is
Yeah.
concerned. Let's go back to your results. So, you know, after this 2003 year, you kind of become a little less active. You end up winning the Berserk Arc Mode Cup and a Symposium Duel Cup, as well as CPM Masters in 2006. So between these
Okay.
3 years, there's at least records of you winning 3 cups. Do you have any particular memories of these cups, or is there anything interesting that happened in this era that you'd like to either comment on or kind of bring up?
I don't know. Not really. I can't.
If you don't remember, I don't hold it against you. It was a really long time
Yeah,
ago, and that's
I know.
completely fine. You played a lot of Quake World TDM and CPM TDM, and you think Quake World
Yes.
TDM is a bit better, but you also played a decent amount of Quake World Duel and CPM Duel. Now, what are the
Yes.
differences here in the two duel games? Which one do you think is better?
I think CPM Duel is better.
Why?
Well, when I used to play Quake well, like you play these maps like DM4 or
Okay.
DM6, and DM4 is really, really unforgiving if you have a bad spawns or bad
Yep.
luck. And DM6 is really slow usually. It's like a cat and mouse game. I kind of like that you can go fast in CPM and do more risky stuff than in Quake World.
Interesting. Now you also played VQ3 Duel, so I guess when you look at these
Yeah.
three duel games, what are the strengths of each one of them compared to the other ones? And if you had to rank
Okay.
them, how would you rank them?
Okay. I think CPM Duel's best things are maps, rail, lightning gun. Not so easy to palm lock all the maps. And well, maybe I'll get back to that later. I like Vanilla Quake's slowness, really. It had some good maps. I can't remember what was one map. Maybe DM13 or
Yes.
something
Okay.
like
Quake
that.
3 DM13. This is the one without the railgun.
Yeah. I liked it. It was actually really fun to play. And well, Quake World has its things best at like rocket launcher with the big splash damage, and map control is really key in Quake World. And maybe, but I have to say that Kenya tournaments in Quake World were really fun. The maps played so much differently than the normal maps in Quake World.
Did you play any Kenya tournaments in CPM?
No. At least I can't remember now, but did I?
Interesting. Sorry, I'm just going through my questions. You know, in this time period, you also go to QLAN 2 for a VQ3 Cup, and you end up in the top 8.
Yes.
I think this is the, if I remember correctly, I remember watching this LAN, and this is the LAN I think Zamis was at this LAN as well. No, he wasn't.
Yes.
I don't. He
he
was, right?
I might be wrong.
I just remember there was a GTV game warm up that Zamis was about to play, and you were warming up with him on ZTN, and you guys were having a really high scoring game.
Okay.
And you know, it seems to me like even in VQ3 you are quite an aggressive player. Well, I guess when I look at your demos, I don't get the impression that you're an aggressive player, but you always be involved in you've been involved in a lot of high scoring games. Why do you think that is?
Hard question. Maybe kind of brings me back to Quake World, where you have to wither the armor of the opponent with bad weapons and like shotguns. And then
now, Painkiller comes out. Sorry,
also,
go ahead. No,
yes.
please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Continue. Also, I find it fun to play fast-paced, silly games sometimes.
I agree. I think it's just a lot more fun to play plus forward aggressive style than it is to play plus backwards. You know, it's not that plus there's anything inherently wrong with plus back. It's just I feel like the spirit of Quake is plus forward, not plus back. Right? Is that disagreeable?
I agree. Yeah. I think the same.
Now, Painkiller comes out in 2005. You know, Vu and Galasak, two CPM players, end up doing really well.
Yeah.
However, you're kind of missing from the circuit. Was there any reason why you didn't get into competitive Quake Painkiller? And what did you think of Painkiller when you had started playing it?
I thought it was a cheap knockoff of Quake World.
The money wasn't enough for you? Did you try at least?
Oh, it should have been. It should have been enough.
Yeah.
Like, I always thought it should have been enough, but I don't know. I can't explain it. I just couldn't get into it. I felt maybe I had some other things in life at that point that were more important. And
did you try playing it?
I couldn't. I did try playing it.
Did you ever play it on LAN? Because notoriously, Painkiller's online competitive community never was established because the netcode was so bad. But did you ever play it on LAN against any top players? And kind of what were your thoughts and what were your results?
I played against Wu.
Okay.
And Lexer.
Okay.
I don't know. I think it had some good things in it. I kind of liked the stake gun, even though it was so RNG, kind of.
Yeah, it is kind of, I find when you have high speed projectile weapons that do a lot of damage, you introduce a lot of luck into the game, especially if it's a really fast moving
Yeah,
game, because you just don't know if you're kind of aiming in that direction and praying to a certain degree. You don't know if you're
yeah,
going to hit it, right? And that's always
yeah.
frustrating for me to play against, that's what I always disliked about the state gun.
I hated the shotgun. Like you could slow your opponent with it while he's moving.
Yeah, it had a lot of potential to be a good game, but I just think they got the last 20% wrong. And it just never
Yeah,
took off, unfortunately. Even though, CPL tried their hardest to kind of make it a competitive game, it really, after that 2005 CPL World Tour, it kind of fell apart.
yes.
Now, why did you stop playing CPM? What happened? Because you were one of the best players. You
I I got older
okay?
and more priorities in life, kind of, and I kind of lost some of the fun from it
Any
because
yeah.
I have been similar games for 20 years. So I don't know.
Uh,
It's like
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
now that I found Dota 2, I kind of like found the same spark like what I did when I found Quake World or CPMA.
I'm kind of, I guess, I don't know. I have to hear your answer to this first. Did you get sucked into WoW as well? Was that a part of it? Okay,
No,
good. Because
no,
it seems like a lot of people left that early community because of World of Warcraft. I think everyone's just like, WoW came out.
no, I can't stand World of
Yeah, neither can
Warcraft.
I. Too slow for me. I tried playing it even recently, and I played it for like an hour and a half, and I just got bored.
Okay.
I can't be sitting there farming NPCs all day. Um, okay, so like you start playing the CPM, you don't really get into Painkiller. The CPM community starts to kind of focus more on public games or pickup games at this point than just tournaments. Uh, but in 2016, you kind of make your competitive return with Quake Champions. So let's talk a little bit about
Yes.
Quake Champions, why you decided to come back, what you like about it, and what you dislike about it. So, um, it's not so much that it's not that you would just stop playing. You would kind of stop connecting to IRC. You weren't really active on like ES Reality or any of the other major message boards for a long time, probably 10 years, maybe longer. Uh, how did you? What sparked the interest for you again with Quake in Quake Champions? And you initially started competing. How did that go? And just, I guess, generally tell us your experiences with Quake Champions.
Okay. Well, at first I was really excited about the new Quake.
Okay.
Then, but I didn't wanna believe that it had champions in it with abilities,
Okay.
which was a bad thing for me at the start, at least. So when it came last year, I got the CD key easily from for the beta from 04.
Okay.
So I decided to try it, and it felt quite similar to Quake's in a sense. And so I decided that guess I could play some. It's not a big deal. Well, it is a big deal for me to play actively. So at at first, I don't know. It was fun to play pub games, and when there were more players than in CPMA at the moment, of course.
Yep.
So made it just easier to play. I haven't still, to be honest, played really seriously, but I'm slowly getting there. Being I'm starting to get better and fun to compete, of course.
Are there any notable players you've beaten so far? Not in just like even in public games. Any big names you've taken out?
I did beat Base in Whale of Nat.
Okay, interesting. Any other names?
Um, uh, Toxic and Xron destroyed us on 2 and 2.
Lol. Yeah, they're really good.
Yeah.
They're really, really good. Toxic, some people claim maybe the best aimer in Quake of all time.
I don't know. I did play against Kielsen, but that was a long time ago. He destroyed me on Slash. It was fun to play him, I guess. So
What do you like about Quake Champions, or what do you think? Just give me your general impressions of Quake Champions, and where do you think where they're trying to take Quake in 2018?
well, I think it's quite newbie friendly at least. So if you're a new one, you can easily join it. Not so hard as maybe Quake 3. And I hope they develop it for the noobs and the pros,
Are you
whatever does
are
it
you
mean.
actively competing in Quake Champions right now? Are you playing in any online cups or anything, or no, not really?
Mm, just some 2-on-2 ranked and 1-on-1 ranked.
What's your rank right now in 1v1?
It's 2-on-2, it's 2,167, I
Okay.
think. And Duel is about the same at the
Okay,
moment.
those are pretty high ranks. I'm a little bit surprised. That's really high, actually, right?
Well, I've played like 80 duels since the ranked came in,
Okay.
so it doesn't tell really much.
Yeah, okay. And I don't know if there's a rank decay, and there's definitely. Oh, I think they did a rank reset
No.
recently as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, Describe, I guess, what are your biggest strengths as a player when it comes in a dual environment, whether it's Quake World, CPM, Quake Champions, or whatever.
My biggest what?
Strengths. What make you what
Rocket
make you
launcher.
good? Okay, really. In terms of
Yeah.
weapons, is there anything specific about your playstyle that would make you think you're difficult to play against? Or how do you make your opponent's life worse?
I used to think that I was really good at spamming rockets,
Do you think that's accurate?
but
Is that fair?
I don't think so at the moment.
At the moment,
No.
not right now, but at the time, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Now you've also competed in CPM recently. How has the
Yeah.
game changed between when you were the kind of the dominating force in the early 2000 versus
Well,
2018?
I think the aim of people have gotten really much better. It's harder to get in now when people all have like decent aims. But that's part of the technology with the mouses and stuff like that.
Are there any differences in playstyle that you've noticed?
I don't think so. Not that much. Well, I could see like I think Wu would still dominate and still does. Like I don't think he would have to change much his playstyle from the early days.
Um, we were talking about this a little bit earlier as well. When it comes to CPM Duel, Finland has a pretty storied history.
Yep.
There's really three eras of like European CPM Duel. There's the Rat Vu era, okay, which is includes one Finnish player. After you guys becomes the Coddy era. He's kind of the dominant player in
Yep.
Europe for while he's playing. And then once Cuddy disappears, soon after that we kind of enter, I guess you can call like the Gaia era.
Gaia
Right,
era.
the
Yeah.
the Gaia, Hal, kind of Memphis, like these kids all come up together
Yeah.
and they'll all do exceptionally well. Why do you think Finland seems to have a place in every one of these eras? What is it about Finnish players? I think I asked you this one already, in fairness. And how would you, when you look at Rat and you look at Coddy and then you look at Gaia, what are the differences? And if they all had to play at their best, who would win and why?
Well, I think I would win Cody,
Okay.
but that Gaia would probably beat me.
Now,
And Gaia's
sorry,
yes,
go ahead, sorry.
continue. And I think Gaia is the new this new era CPM players like, and Cody still belongs to the past like me.
Coddy's kind of a bridge
So
between you and uh, uh, Gaia in a lot of ways. You
Okay.
now Coddy improved a lot, like after you guys had left. Like he ended up beating Vu in a
Okay.
couple of tournaments as well. But you're still confident, like at your
Okay.
best, you would beat Coddy. Is that right? What
Yes.
gives you the advantage over Coddy? Why would you? What would make you say that?
So I just, well, I can't really tell because I haven't seen his best demos from the era where he beat Wu and stuff like that. So it's hard to
Is
say.
it just
Maybe.
a psychological thing? You always had beaten
Yes.
him, so you expect to
Yeah.
have like that edge when you
Yes.
before the game starts that I'm winning this game. That's the end of it. Like there's no real question in your
I
mind.
guess so.
Um, if your weapon is the rocket launcher, what would Coddy and Guy's respective weapons be? What makes them
Gaius would be
okay?
railgun, I think.
What about Coddy?
Maybe shaft.
Interesting. Okay, that's cool. Now, I guess if there was okay, there's two questions I want to. One of the one I've thought, and I wish I'd asked other people before. If there was like a CPM Nations Duel Cup, you know, of all the best players of all time in CPM, where do you think Finland would rank in a potential Nations Duel Cup if you take, you know, the best players of every country that ever played? It's pretty high, right? When you consider
Top 5
uh,
at least.
what other countries would compete
Like
with you guys?
Poland
Okay.
maybe. And I don't know, UK somehow.
Really, I can't really think of any meaningfully notable UK duelers. You know, they've had some very good
Yeah.
ones, but not like Rat, Coddy, Gaia duelers. Okay,
Oh well, of course, North America would be good.
yes. Well, the United States, maybe Canada. I don't think so. So Canada, let's say US. Um, what's the other country? Poland, Finland. There's Germany potentially, and I think I can't like Sweden for some reason never had any really high-end duelers. Well, I shouldn't say they didn't have any dominating duelers in CPM. When I think about it, they never really did in VQ3 as well. Right?
Yes.
Um, okay, interesting. So I guess my next question is to you is where do you rank yourself in the all-time greats when it comes to CPM duelers or just players?
Well, I would rank myself really high on Duel because of the many Duel tournament wins, but I don't know exactly a number. It'd be interesting to see a Duel tournament with all the old players and new players.
Who would be some people to compete with you? I guess Aphelion and Vu are the easy ones, but who are some other players that you would
Yes.
have to have in this conversation? We were having this conversation a lot last year. We were titling it the God of Promode, and who the one God of Promode is. If I had to ask you that question, who do you think is the God of Promode? This is a good one.
Argon.
No, Archon doesn't duel. He does. This doesn't count.
I know. Well, God of Promode.
Yeah, just the God.
I can't say myself.
Why not?
Because I'm not a card.
Well, I know, but I mean, with respectively, you know, within the context of the game, you know, like if you had to name,
Okay,
if you had to name,
guess I'm the God of Promode.
sorry.
Guess I'm the God of
Oh,
Promode.
really? Okay, I'm happy that you say that. It's good to, you know, some players have come in saying, you know, maybe me, but it's good to hear that you say, yeah, it's probably me. If I had to pick one player, it'd be me. That's dope to hear. Take a look at some of these other questions I had prepared. Have you watched any Quake World TDM recently, or throughout the mid 2000s?
I wish I
Yeah,
had.
I would like to know how you think that community's changed, because that's an interesting community in the sense that they've always had a very high level, really active TDM scene until very recent, until I think the last 5 years where it started to die off. But they kind of had a very big scene for a
Yeah.
long time. What do you think the future of I guess CPM is and Quake in general?
Hard question.
Hmm.
Well, I think CPM is gonna be still played in public games like it's now for a pretty long time still. Kind of similarly like Quake
Mhm.
World. But I don't know about Quake Champions. If they do things good, and I don't know if that mindset of the youth is in Quake games, to be honest.
Yeah, it's really hard with Quake Champions because Swell came in last week and he thinks on paper when you look at Quake Champions you should have a relatively good game, but when you put it all together it doesn't seem to be as strong as you had imagined it on paper.
Yeah.
What do you think its software can do at this point to remedy this situation? Do you think there's anything they can do? Do you think it's already too late now that they've really had the game's gone free to play and stuff? Or
To be honest, I think if they added Team Fortress, it might do good, maybe. But with the champions, I don't know.
I agree with you, by the way, and I think I've been saying this for some time that they should have just forgotten about Duel altogether and just focused on Quake World Team Fortress 2, basically. Because when you look at the
Yeah.
fast-paced competitive FPS games, there's only really two of them: Overwatch and TF2, right? CS:GO is
Yes.
a tactical shooter. I don't even consider it in the same kind of realm as a Quake, but I think Overwatch and TF2 are not similar, but you can see how there's a genetic relationship between them and
Yeah.
Quake. The lineage is very clear. If I'm disappointed its software didn't go in and claim Team Fortress as their game because it was initially
Yeah.
their game, and they've let other people kind of move it to the next level when they could have done it themselves. But it's interesting to hear you say that as a dueler. What do you think? How do you like the duel format?
I kind of hate it, but I think it has some perks for it.
Would you prefer?
Like,
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah.
No, no, please go ahead.
Well, okay. Well, the perks are that the duels are almost less of time, but that's really it. But in reality, it might last longer.
Yeah, that's right. It could potentially last longer just because you're kind of playing a one-shot kill kind of game mode,
Yeah.
and it doesn't make sense to be playing very, very aggressive all the time. Or aggressive play is there are smaller windows for aggressive play in Quake Champions, I find, and generally the default status is that I'm gonna play defensive until I have a very clear chance of being aggressive. Is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas then I find some of the other Quakes, you kind of do it the other way. It's like, I'm going to play aggressive until I'm forced to play defensive. And I generally prefer that kind of style and pattern over
Yeah.
the Quake Champions style. Let's take a look. What do you think? Was it disappointing for you playing Quake Champions TDM as somebody with a long history in TDM?
Yes. Well, it's causal fun, but that's
Yeah,
about it.
that's right. They've really reduced it to just a public game. What
Yeah.
was that upsetting for you as a TDM player?
No,
Didn't care.
not really. If I want to play good TDM, I play Quake World or CPM.
Understood. Damn, I was hoping you would say CPM TDM is better, but you didn't. It's okay. Let's.
CPM TDM is
Oh,
better.
okay, that's what. Yeah, I knew that's what you were actually thinking. Thank you for letting us know. I'm gonna quote this for a long time. So we'll move on to the next segment here. So we went over the challenge series, we went over your history with Quake and Steven. Is there any other questions that you were hoping I would ask you and you had kind of a preparing an answer for, or is there anything else you would like to touch upon? Because we've kind of touched on your history and like as a player in Quake World and CPM and VG3 and Quake Champions. Are there anything else that you would like? Is there anything else you'd like to discuss?
Well, my head's kind of blank at the moment.
No, that's completely fine. Are there any other games you're playing right now? Oh, you said you were playing Dota. Did you watch the international?
Yes,
What
I
did
did.
you think? Just generally of the production and stuff, not so much the game.
Well, I thought the production was decent. Like, of course, they are gonna have some flaws, but maybe worse than last year. But
You
still
ever
good.
think Quake will ever rise to that level of popularity? You think it's possible?
Uh, I can't say that.
It would be nice.
Probably not.
It would be nice.
Yes. Well, it would be nice.
But I agree with you, probably not as well. Okay, so we're going to go to our next segment. It's called Rapid Fire Questions, and I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and
Okay.
you just have to answer as quickly as possible, okay? So, the first question I have to ask you is, what's your favorite game?
Quake World.
What's your favorite mod not including CPM?
TF2.
Your favorite opponent to play against? Rat? Hello? I think you can you hear me, Rat? Because I cannot hear you. 1 second. Yeah, I can't hear you. I'm sorry. I don't know if you can hear me. Let me send you a PM. Still can't hear you, Rat. Hello, hello. Yeah, my stuff is working, but I cannot hear you. I can hear you trying to speak, but nothing is coming through. Hello? Oh, I think I heard you.
Can you
Yes,
hear me
yes.
now?
Sorry, sorry, sorry. Thank you. Did you knock out your mic by accident? Just trying to
No,
buy
I
more
don't know what
more
happened.
time.
Yes, of course.
So, who's your favorite opponent?
Woo, but in play, Painkiller Lexer.
Oh, okay, cool. Favorite map?
Skull on Quake World.
What map? Skull. Okay.
Skull, if you know it.
Your most favorable moment in Quake?
Getting winning a load of tournaments. I can't think of one now.
Who is your worst opponent to play against? Who did you hate playing?
I hate playing Trippy.
Okay. What was the what was the map you hated the most?
CPM 24.
Wow. What was your worst? What is the mode that you hated the most?
I don't know.
You gotta give me something.
NTF.
Wow. Damn, I love NTF. I guess I didn't ask you this. What's your favorite mode?
Oh, TDM.
What is the most current album that you bought?
Dalek. Check. Let me check it. Sorry.
Oh, your mic is doing funny thing. Hello? Oh god, rat. Sorry. Your mic is really it's making a lot of robotic
Okay.
sounds. Okay, there we go. Back to human sounds.
Did you hear what
I
I
did
said?
not.
Dalek's endangered philosophies.
Interesting. What is your favorite TV show right now?
Preacher.
It's called Preacher?
Preacher.
I don't know what that is. I don't watch a lot of TV. I don't even know why I asked these questions. Sorry. Do you watch Game of Thrones?
Okay. Yes.
Who is your favorite character in Game of Thrones?
I'll have to say the mountain.
Oh, that's dope. Okay, dope. We're gonna go to our final segment here, which is just a couple of community questions. So the first question I have is by a player called Dys, DYS. He also goes by the name as Daps. He says, "How does it feel losing to the new generation of Terminator of CTF?" He's talking about himself.
It felt okay. It's good to get wrecked by new players.
Drex wanted to ask you about your time in Dalton's. How, even though you never won anything, you guys were a Division 1 team. If you could just give us a couple of words on who the Daltons were, what you guys did, and what made you guys so good.
Well, Daltons were me and like 4 to 6 people from Pori in Finland. Okay. And they were all like quite a lot older than me, basically like 6 years older or something like that. And like we never expected to get any results, but at least I was quite surprised that we did as good as we did. And other Daltons are Vertigo, Mate, Some, that's about it.
Do you still speak to any of them?
Well, not really. I wish I had their contact information. I once saw Vertigo in Helsinki, actually. That was like 11 years ago.
Do you speak to Andy?
No, I don't know anything about Andy at the moment.
Damn it.
I would like to see him. At least he lived in the same city as me.
I have him on Facebook. I'll ask him to message you.
Okay. Nice.
You're welcome. And our last community question is by Magikarp. He wants to know, did you know you were getting a bot named after you? And if not, what was your reaction like when you found out? And who are some other players do you think that are worthy of having their own bot?
Argon told me that I was getting a bot. And I was really surprised and honored at the same time.
Not offended? You're like, you think you can code me into a stupid program?
It's fine.
I guess the final part of that question is, who are some other players do you think that are worthy of having their own bots?
Gelsack. Okay. Andy. Woo.
Okay.
And maybe Gaia, if you want. And El Pahua would be nice.
You know El Pahua is dead, right?
Yes, I know.
Okay. Sad story. He was really good. Okay, cool. Well, that's pretty much it for Promode Podcast number 10. Thank you to everybody who listened. Okay. And thank you to Rat for taking the time today to go over this. I really appreciate it. We got to learn a lot of cool stuff about the early days of CPM. And the truth of it is, we got to learn a lot about you, because there aren't very many interviews and stuff that are left. I'm sure you've done a lot, but so we really appreciate that. Any final remarks or parting words or bits of advice to the young players in CPM, or just anybody?
Play more Promode.
Dope. Okay, right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this today. We will be back. No, you're very welcome. We'll be back sometime soon. Hopefully, we'll have Rat on again as well one day. That will be dope. Maybe with Drex and Swelt together, a No Balls podcast. That